All right, I am so excited to have you here, Rona. Welcome to the Abundance Club. I remember sitting in the room in LA where I first met you and on Kathy's retreat and hearing you speak and thinking and feeling that you are someone who is deeply embodied in what you do and in what you teach. And it's likely that you have had your own experience in walking through. I know that we tend to be our own first client and walking through the lessons and the challenges along the way that I would really love to dive into as well. But what stood out for me is the way that you speak about co-creation, about manifestation, about vibration, and really about this divine plan for us. That it felt to me so resonant. It was such a full body yes, and I think it did for so many in that
Mm.
room. And so I want to continue this conversation because I know that there is so much more here that you have to share. And I know that this is just going to awaken so much in our listeners. So I really appreciate you being here. And I guess I want to dive into this conversation about manifestation because I know that you're a manifestation and a mindset coach and a motivational speaker. And I guess I feel like one thing that really sets you apart is your own connection to
Mm.
God, to source, to your soul. So, can we start here? And what is your experience? And I'm just kind of diving
Yeah,
straight
I love
in because that was what really
that.
stood out to me in this conversation around manifestation. How important is it for us to remember and to lean into our own
Mm.
spiritual connection or whatever that understanding is unique to
Yeah,
ourselves?
yeah. First of all, thank you for having me and for creating this sacred space where people can connect to God and to Source. And I call him God, and whatever that somebody calls the Creator, I respect and honor. It's really a pleasure for me to be here, and I'm so happy that great people bring great people together. And Kathy is one of my faves, so it was so special that we connected through her.
Mm.
It's funny because yesterday was Mother's Day and we were doing a little toast to my mom. And I said, the reason I'm on this path is because obviously it's you. You created me and you brought me into this world, but it was what you taught me when I was the age my kids are, right? Like 6, 8, where she said, anytime you have a challenge, I want you to write a letter to God.
Mm.
And to me, it seemed like, okay, I guess everyone does this. It wasn't such a big deal until I got older and I realized every letter I wrote just created another brick in this bridge between me and God and brought me closer to Him and made Him so accessible. And I was like, that's not so common. That was really because of her. And so it started for me as a kid, just knowing that He's that accessible, that there is this force that I can turn to and really ask for what I want. And she would say, map out what you want, like really tell him, really like draw it out. And so that was when I started imagining, right? This whole work we do now is imaging in, but creating this image that I said to God, this is how I want it to look like. This is how I see it when I close my eyes. Can you help me get there?
Mm.
Right. And I really attribute that to her and to that foundation. And so as I got older, a lot of my work, what I found I was gravitating towards were the teachings of I'm Jewish, so my source has always been through Judaic texts, the Torah, Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. It always just spoke to me where I was like, oh my gosh, this is not something that was just recently invented. Like manifestation is at the source of the Torah. It talks about Egypt, and one of my favorite stories, reading it as a kid, was the women of Egypt when, Moses came and said, all right, guys, we went through the 10 plagues and, the king is going to let us out. Paro is going to let us out and grab your things, right? And we just went through the fires in LA where homes were evacuated, right? And everyone thought, what would I take if I had to leave? Well, the women of the Bible took drums and Miriam, who is Moses' sister, asked, Moses, like, what are you guys doing bringing these drums? And she said, we're celebrating. And there was nothing physical to show for it, right? But just a knowing the women had that we're sure he's going to figure this out. Like, I don't see the horses to carry us out. I don't see the path opening, but we just know. And I just remember as a kid, I'm like, oh my God, that's it. It's the knowing that I don't have to see it, but when I close my eyes and if I have the
Mm.
image, it's mine.
Gosh, I love that. And you know what? I think that this is something that so many on this path struggle with is the doing of all of the, let's say, our part in it, the envisaging, the having that clear intention, like you said, around like, and I love that you had that experience in your childhood of like creating it and seeing it and mapping it out. Like I can remember in my childhood really similar. And I used to actually design houses and I would imagine families in them and I would imagine. So it's interesting in the work that I do now. And I think we get clues from our childhood and from our upbringing about what we're here for, what our divine assignment
I
is.
love that.
But
Yeah.
you mentioned about having, having that plan for ourselves and then continuing on the path
Mm.
even when we see no evidence in our physical three-dimensional reality that points to the fact that we've been doing all of this work. So let's go there into this
Yeah. That's
really tricky
true.
place of discomfort because I feel like so many people can relate to that when they're looking around going, hang on a minute, I'm doing the work. I'm doing the steps. I'm envisaging what's going on here. Why aren't I seeing this manifested in my reality in the way I guess that I've wanted to? Let's go into
Yeah.
that.
Oh, it's everything. And I am actually writing a book about this right now where it's like, we're one exit away, the name of the book,
Mm,
where we've done all the work. And it's like, if you can just hang on for one more exit, right? You're there. And we do it, we do the manifesting, we do the praying, we sit there, we visualize it. And then the last, I feel like last test is like, show me you trust. Like, just show me. Because if it were a formula, you would have had the answer right now. You would have seen it in front of you, and it'd be a plug and play. Now I need you to know this is beyond a formula. This is a trust. This is I always say, one of my favorite things to say is drop the fear, drop into faith. And that's the moment. That's like the final call. And if you can hold on for that final moment where you're like, okay, my fear is taking over. I feel the discomfort. I feel the insecurity. How can I just lean further in? And that's what it requires you to say, wait a minute, hold on. Why do I even want all of this to begin with? That
mm,
intentional check-in, right? Because that moment, the ego kind of tries to take the wheel, right? This is embarrassing. What's going to happen? I said I'm going to, I just had a big event last Thursday. I'm launching a new initiative through my nonprofit. It's called the Global Healing Blanket, where we're actually piecing together visual representations of messages of hope, city to city.
mm,
And, and this community in LA, God bless them, they buy their tickets an hour before the event. And I've got a team
mm,
now, and I'm okay with it because I do the visualization. I know it. And everyone's like, Rona, where are the ticket sales? Where are the ticket sales? And I'm like, I know this is the final hour, but you guys, now is the time we have to lean in and say, forget the ticket sales, right? We get so caught up in the ego, what it looks like. What
mm.
are we here to serve? Why are we here to serve? And when you can refocus and you recalibrate and you can answer that question when that one exits away and you think you're going to pull over because you don't think you have any more gas, if you can answer that question at that moment, the gates open, the abundance flows. That's the key.
Yeah. And I think we get caught up on the desires that we tend to forget,
Oh,
tend to forget the how. And I think that that's such a beautiful reminder, isn't it? And I love this about the one exit away. And when I look back on my life, and you're probably the same, Rona, is that like you see it was like it was right then. And I wonder, let's talk about this piece of surrender because this comes into the conversation now, right? Do you think that surrender plays a huge role in that? It's like when I am willing, like the ego can't hang on anymore. And the
yeah.
ego just goes, all right, I can't figure this out.
Yeah. This makes no sense. Right.
I can't
Right.
figure this out. So, you speak about that, about surrendering the how to the divine. How big a piece is that in this? Because we get so caught in thinking that
Oh,
it's our job.
yeah. It's huge, but it comes back to what are you even trying to accomplish, right? Look, I had a benchmark in my head of what success would look like. For this event, for example, Thursday night, we did it at the Museum of Tolerance, and I was like, okay, I want to raise this much money. And then as I'm noticing the ticket sales aren't coming in, I was like, am I doing the very thing I coach clients not to do, which was being so stuck on an outcome? And I said,
Mhm.
yeah. And I said, okay, what does this number mean to me? Right? I put a number out there that I'm trying to raise X amount of money. What does that number mean to me? It was like financial support, stability, visibility, impact, right? Now you're getting beyond this, like this being stuck on some outcome. Now you're like, okay, if I know what I'm trying to achieve, can I allow the space for it to manifest in ways I can't really even fathom right now?
Yeah.
What if one person's going to walk in the door of this event and her or his involvement can do all of those things
Mm.
weeks after, right? What if I'm not going to achieve the vision I'm seeing exactly transpire that moment in time? But if I know my intention, if I know what I'm here for, can I allow the space for it to unfold in a better way?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you that I'm seeing it now where I didn't get that number, quote unquote, but the people in that room are working around the clock since Thursday to the point where I'm getting messages nonstop since Thursday. It's only Monday. I'm connecting you to my friend in New York. They want to make a documentary out of this, like end and over and beyond. And I was like, well, I'm glad I didn't settle for that number, And that's the magic. Yeah.
Surrendering our own will to the divine will. And isn't it interesting? Because I can relate to this too, Rona, in that you've been doing the work for so long. You live and you breathe it. And we're also human.
Mm-hmm.
And we have that aspect of ourselves. We have the ego that wants to drag us by the hand and say, this is the way. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
do it this way. And it's just such a beautiful reminder. And how can we develop? Like, how have you found that you have developed? You spoke about faith. I agree. I think like faith and trust are the core, it's the core essence of what gets you through, right? Of what gets you through to that exit where all of a sudden you can see and feel the manifestation coming into place. Like we can't do it without faith and trust.
Right.
What has helped you develop your own ability
Mm-hmm.
to lean into faith even when the ego is telling you this is so unsafe? The
Mm-hmm.
ego is giving you all the reasons and the stories why not to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a constant. I'm talking to myself all day. I was just telling a friend, I'm like, if somebody were to watch me, I probably look like somebody like a schizophrenic, like somebody hospitalized her. I am constantly like, okay, okay, remember, release. I mean, it is a constant, constant reminder. But I will say what saved me is the rituals, is having non-negotiable every morning, 6 a.m. I am up, I'm in my backyard, and I am having a full-blown conversation with God,
Mm,
loud conversation. And my neighbors are
mm,
probably like, can she shut up already? Like, okay, we got it. But if I didn't have those where it's integrated in my daily life, I don't know what I would do. I don't. It's like if you leave it to when you feel it, it will never happen. And it's the moments we don't feel it that when we have it on autopilot and that knee jerk saves you because you just are used to getting up and and you'll do it because you don't want to. It's that moment we need it the most. So I would say I'm a big fan of rituals, daily routines that remind you. I mean, to the point where I have reminders on my phone to stop and just tap into the visualization. 4 times a day, I have a 2 minute requirement. I don't care where I am. I stop and I'll do just the inner work where I'm seeing it and I'm reminding God of it and I'm surrendering the control of it. So it's got to be built into your schedule. It's just got to.
I love that. And it's really just continuing to shine the spotlight of your own awareness
Mhm.
because it can get hijacked so easily. So, what
Totally.
does that look like for you? So, you mentioned you go outside and you have this conversation with God, or when you have those reminders, is that you tapping back into a vision, into a future version of you who is living that reality? Like, what would that look like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with God's piece for sure. I first started off just sitting outside. Ever since I got a dog, it created this routine even more so because he wants to get up at 6. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm up anyway. So I spent about 10 minutes just silence and breathing. And after the breathing and the silence, I literally stand up. There's a corner in my yard that I'm always drawn to. And I do, outwardly, and I thank God for the little things, I always say it's a momentum building because sometimes you don't feel like thanking God. Like I'm pissed, I'm upset, I went to bed angry, right? Like, why is this happening? But if you can start with, I'm grateful I can stand on my feet. I'm grateful I woke up this morning with vision. I'm grateful I can hear the bird chirping. And then you
Mm.
kind of run into this momentum building exercise. And then you get into it, and I really focus the conversation with God on gratitude of the things that I'm seeking as though they have already. It's like I trust you so much. I know how amazing this event is unfolding. I already know it, and I'm so thankful. Thank you. And I trust you. I trust you that things with my kids will work out. And I know you're giving them the strength to get through this hardship that they're experiencing.
Mm.
So it's not even almost like saying it happened, but it's really just saying, I am so sure that you're sending the people that need the things you're sending. And it just makes me walk away like, oh, yeah, of course he is. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important too, because we tend to hold so much as
Mm,
individuals, as women, as mothers, we hold so much thinking that we have to do it all and we have to figure it out. And I love a lot of the Kabbalistic teachings around receivership
mhm,
and how we as women, we have been so conditioned to give, to overfunction and to overgive. How is this piece, see, because you live these teachings as well, so it's very familiar for you, and I love the Torah.
mhm,
And how important is this piece then of turning that around and remembering that inherently, our job as women is to receive, is to be that
mhm.
vessel.
Oh
and
my gosh,
and
you
how
said
have
the
you
B
worked with
word.
that in your own practice?
Yeah, yeah. The word I was just going to use, and you just used the V word, the vessel.
Yeah.
When you know you're a vessel, it just humbles you because you're like, listen, it's not me. I'm a channel, right? And when you're in your flow, when you're doing the work, there are times I'm like, what did I just say? I don't even know. It like comes through you. And people will say, like, how do you think of that? And I'm like, I didn't. Like I really plug so deeply into being of service. And every time I speak, even whether it's Thursday night, whether it's before you and I speak, I say, allow the words of my mouth to penetrate their hearts and their souls because that's all I know I'm here for. I'm here to just communicate words that are meant to impact and sit in your soul.
Mm.
And so when you're here and you feel that you're called forward, it is so much more pure because it isn't about you. So you kind of kick the ego out, right? And then you also realize like when you're a vessel and when you're doing this work, like, my gosh, you've got this focus, right? Where look, things get hard, things get canceled. We had, 2 days before the event, somebody that was partnering with us decided not to. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? But leaning into that and saying, okay, if I'm here to be a vessel and my intention is pure, right? It also makes you think like, what's your intention? Are you just trying to be famous? Are you trying to get
Mm.
the world to just pat you on the back? And when you can really do the soul searching and say, no, like I'm really passionate about this. I really want to help people. I really know I'm here on that mission. Then you're able to really say, okay, well, if that door closed, it must mean it is not a clear channel for me. It won't allow me to be
Yeah.
this best. And I can't tell you how often, again, just this past week, seeing the way that that truly manifests and brings the blessing is when you can say goodbye. They say rejection is God's redirection.
Mm.
It, if we didn't have this philosophy of being the vessel, you would be so heartbroken every time somebody said no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in that case too, it's like it really allows you to pivot when you get nervous of why something or someone is not approving of you, which is really critical.
It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And it really just allows everything, as you said, the guidance, the wisdom, the resources, the the abundance, like everything to flow through you when you understand that you are that channel and that vessel. And I feel like this is such a big calling, that we're being invited as women to wake up and remember our true feminine essence.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because, as women, we're doing it all, right? You mentioned the wife, the mom, the daughter, parents are getting older, all of it. And people really get it wrong where they're like, I will get to myself after I take care of everyone else. And it couldn't be further from the truth. And we all hear put your oxygen mask first, and all sounds really nice and cliche, but I can tell you with certainty, my daughter just wrote me one of the most beautiful Mother's Day cards. She's
Yeah.
10. And she said to me something. She wrote something in the card. Actually, I'll show it to you. It's like sitting at my desk because I just think it was
Mm.
so cute. I don't know if
Oh
you
my
could see with
gosh.
the blurred background, but okay, let's see if you can get it there. All right, so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the front, but the back is like she wrote things like, "You give me energy.
Mm.
She wrote, "You are my soul," right? When
Mm.
she says to me, "You give me energy," and inside she wrote a message, and it was the most beautiful. I mean, it was like beautiful, beautiful. But one of the things that caught my attention, she said, "In the mornings, when you come to my room to wake me up, you do so with the biggest smile."
Mm.
And it's interesting because she's my first room I go to after I do the me piece, the meditation, the talking to God. And I'm so filled, right? And I
Yeah.
walk into her room, she got it. I didn't have to tell her, Rachel, I was outside, I was meditating, you should do it. No, I just walked in with that high vibe, my cup full, and here I am, and you have me. She
Yeah.
feels my energy. She sees the smile. There is nothing better we can do for the people around us than to do the work on ourselves. There just isn't.
Yeah. And that, even just that feeling of fullness, we talk about like the gratefulness. When we're grateful, we are filled
Oh,
up, and then we can give from that overflow. And it's just that experience of like having that embodied experience of like, okay, I filled myself up.
mm,
But I think what we forget is how easy that is, how
mm,
simple that is, how it
so much.
takes no time at all. And I love that card. I received some such beautiful cards on Mother's Day as well from my kids. And like, this is why we do it. We do it for our younger self, and we do it for our children. And the work that I do, I know is the greatest gift for them. I
Mhm.
know that I can be the best mother I can be because of the
Ab-
way that I am letting myself receive, and
uh,
I'm prioritizing myself. So this is a really important conversation that I think as women, it's not even about becoming, it's just
mm.
remembering and reclaiming this is who you are, this is your nature. So I think that's so beautiful. And when you see that reflected back in a card, oh,
I was like, you got it. You got it. And I love that you said the gratefulness. Oh my gosh, that's so neat. So
mm,
true. It's so true. And like, we think it has to be so hard. We think we have to read 300 parenting books and take them to 30 classes and keep up with the Joneses, right? And you're like, well, my daughter is in the academic decathlon, and and I'm like, my daughter's happy.
yeah,
She's a mom who's happy. Look, do I get it right all the time? No. Last night she went to bed pretty upset at something that happened, but it allows you to just remember, like, it's okay. You can always bring it back. And the one thing they want most is for you to be happy. So
yes,
it's like we think we have to just like do all the to-dos. And it's like, no. And you're just less hard on yourself too. I feel like when you do this work and you can see that it's just your energy and how quickly you can recalibrate that, you don't sit there in the guilt of like, oh, why did I say that? And I'm such a failure. And you create all these stories, right? Like,
mm,
and our kids pick up on it. One of the things my son was dealing with, he was having just a situation at school, and he started just creating, like we all do, a story about what that meant.
yeah,
Oh, it must mean this, and it must mean that, and it must mean this. And I was like, who decided? You get to define how this story plays out. What is your story?
yeah,
Maybe they just made a poor judgment call. Okay. But does that mean you're X, Y, and Z? Right. So if we can model that for our kids and say, that was just, I could have done better. Does that mean I'm a bad mom? Does that mean I'm horrible? Does that mean you're going to end up in an insane asylum in
mm,
20? No, it just means I could have done better. And I'm learning. And that's cool that we could have this conversation right now.
Yeah. Do you know, I had my daughter come in last night, upset because she was having some issues at school, and I think it's just such a beautiful reminder, like even seeing her, and there was that part of me that wanted to take that away. You know, I could recognize there's that part of me that wanted to fix it and make it better. But the power of just being able to hold her in that and trust the lessons that are unfolding. And I love that you said that to him about like you get to choose. And this is such a great lesson for all of us. Like you get to decide and define what it is that you are available for, what you are a vessel for. And I think that that's just such an important reminder. Like we go about our lives and we get caught up in it all, and how often do we stop and pause and consciously go, is this what I want?
Mm.
Right? Is this what I'm available for? I listened to one of your podcast episodes.
Yes.
Um, so I was like, I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
check in with you.
Uh,
And I loved it. And it was a talk that you did,
yeah.
and you spoke about a number of beautiful things. Surrender being one of them, and we've touched on that. And you spoke about having this period of time where you really worked on your vibration, and how that became such a key in you recalibrating to a new level where you became that vibrational match for your desires. And so I'd love to touch on both of these pieces, like both the desire piece about, I believe that we're divinely called or divinely assigned, and we get those messages through our desires. And also, how do we stay or we amplify our vibration, particularly when we are met with fear,
Mm.
comparison, scarcity, and all of the illusions of the ego.
Yeah, it was a journey. It was the time I was thinking the interview was, or the conversation was about an interview I was trying to schedule. It was actually similar to what happened with Kathy. And I was like, all right, I scored it. It was it was my indication that like I'm on the right track. He said yes. It was like one of my top interview guests that I was hoping to get. And then it canceled. And it was one of those cancels that like really hurt my soul because I was like we talked about, like I did the work. Here I am. And I'm now I'm coaching and I had clients and I was like, this can't be. This doesn't happen to people like us who do the magical work, right? And it was such an awakening call for me where and what I talk about is I had to really stop and ask, like we talked about, why do I even want this?
Mm.
And I realized that at that time, the reason I wanted this particular guest was because he was famous and this was going to be my big break. And I'm going to finally, and I was like, wow, my intentions were really not lined up with what I know I'm here to do.
Mm.
And so it made me just really go back and say, well, what am I here to do? What am I here to do? And like, what wakes me up with excitement and what goes, gets me to bed, like just with my heart singing. And so the first step in that was just a real reality internal check was like, what is my why? Right? Why do I want it? And so when I was really able to unpack it, right, it wasn't to be famous. It wasn't that I wanted all these followers. And I had to really clear that out. And I was, okay, I really want to amplify this message of godliness, this message of purpose, this message of, and that the gentleman that I was going to have on my show, who I ended up having, his name is Gedalia Fenster. Hopefully you can listen to that episode,
Mm.
which I recorded right before I did that talk. And we talk about this, and I shared this with them, but it was this idea of like, how do I wanted to be able to bring this message of godliness into like the masses. And he does a really good job. And I felt like, well, I have to just, piggyback off of him. But what ended up happening, and I'm looking back even now as we're talking, is like I developed over that next 2 years my own ability to do that. Where, sometimes we feel like somebody else has to do it for us. I'm going to have him come on my show and he'll talk about it. And now when he came on my show 2 years later, it's funny, people commented that he seemed more interested in what I had to say than I did about what he had to say. And I was like, I did the work.
Mm.
I spent the time learning how can I connect people to God. I went to Kabbalah classes. I really understood what I was teaching for my own self to just fill myself up, right? So it brought me to this whole realization of like, what was my intention? So if my intention was to connect people to God, rather than pull some guy and say, hey, you do it, God was like, well, why don't you do it? But get there, right? So I became the person that I was trying to bring on my show. And
Mm,
that is what brought us to the same level of playing field, him and I, and where it was so seamless for him to come on my show. We literally, I saw him at an event the day before. He was in town from Miami. I showed up and he greeted me as I walked in. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's famous. How does he remember who I am? Long story short, the next day he was in my studio recording. It was the easiest episode I've ever done. It was the most seamless. And it was because we were both here. And it wasn't me saying, come, help carry me up, right? It was, I became the match for it.
mm. And so talk a little bit about then what does that work look like for people that are listening and thinking, this is I want to work on, when we hear it, like raising our
Yeah.
vibration and what does that mean to become that match?
Yeah, I think a lot of silence, a lot of closing your eyes, the morning rituals. It's funny, that's 2 years ago is when I got my dog. So that's when I started doing the sitting outside. I wasn't doing that before. I used to pray. I used to do my traditional, I open up a Siddur, which is a Jewish prayer book, and do my quick, and I'll talk to God throughout the day, but setting the time every morning. And now it's about a 25-minute practice, so having the intention to start the day that way, and that I would say was the biggest work. The silence, like hearing. It's one thing to ask, right? But then when you can like stop, and they say meditation is when you hear God's response. Prayer is when we are asking, and meditation is when we can hear and receive his answer. So that I would say was huge. And so working on the like receivership, like you talk about, where I'm already accepting that it's got to happen. And that conversation of like, I trust, I just know it. I just know it. And so saying that every day for 2 years and standing there in your backyard, like really linking in and connecting. Another thing when I start my silence, of just the meditation, I say I'm aligning myself completely with God, right? I align myself completely in this knowing that I am one with God. Like that conversation to say over and over every single day, I'm one with God,
Mm.
and that's like, if I'm one with God, which Judaism teaches, there's no middleman,
Yeah.
and we're here to be. God created us in His image, and we're walking around, throwing our head on the ground, like, who am I to do this and why? And I'm like, the biggest slap in the face to God is when you walk around and say, who am I to do X, Y, Z?
Mm.
Who are you? You're somebody He put in this world thinking that you are capable of it. So
Yes.
that to me is just, it was like this opening every single day where it's like, okay, I'm one with the creator of all things.
Yeah.
Can, can I harness that a little bit more? And that's really, I would say, was the biggest game changer. I think if there was one thing I could say, it's that morning reset that changed, I would say, everything for me.
Mm-mm. And then you mentioned about, having those reminders during the day to come back into that. And I think that, you mentioned such powerful things. I mean, the silence, and that's been my experience as well, because I've been on this journey for a while, but really in these last few years, developing this practice of surrender, of handing over, of getting out of my own way and becoming that vessel. And silence is such a part of that. And when we talk about receivership, we need to be able to first receive the messages and the guidance. We can't do that staying cling to our phone and the myriad of distractions that we have that are continually pulling our focus and our attention. And you know, how often do we get to craft out those spaces for ourselves to be in the silence? And I love that. You also mentioned, and you've touched on it a few times, which I think is really powerful, is this knowing. You said, like, I know it. And it's such an anchoring piece in your own practice when you can be in it. To me, the knowing is even bigger than the believing, right? Or than the having hope. It's just that clarifying that I know that if I have this vision, if I'm on this path, if I have these desires, it's already done. And can you speak a little bit about that from your
Totally. Yeah.
experience?
Yeah. I mean, and if you believe it's already done, you will find every which way to prove yourself right.
Yeah.
We are on a mission constantly to prove ourselves right. You've heard this before, I'm sure. If you're whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
So if you're going to believe something and you're going to work all day long, that we're just naturally wired to do so to convince yourself of your belief, why not pick a good belief, right? Why not pick a belief that's empowering that you actually want to manifest? Because what happens is when you start talking like this and you start saying like, I trust, I know it's already here, you're going to get these breadcrumbs all day long that are going to say, oh, see, here it is, here it is, here it is. That's right. I knew it. It's here. And you start looking for things. And when you look for things, you'll find them. What you look for, you will find.
Yeah.
And so it just creates this magnetic energy that you start attracting things that are its match. So, that I would say is the biggest part of like really unveiling this in a real time. Like the other day, I mean, I was doing this, I wanted to go on a walk. I usually don't do this manifesting walking around. I'm usually sitting and I'm quiet, but it was like a morning that I just needed to move my body. So it was like 6 a.m. and nobody's out there. So I'm doing my talk. I actually put on headphones so it doesn't look like I'm too crazy, but I'm like, I'm with you and I'm one with you and and I'm here and I'm just like, what would you have me know? And my eyes are open, right? Or else I'd be bruised up right now from tripping over myself. And I just like lean into my soul and I have that inner connection with my inner knowing, right? And I just say, what do you want me to know right now? Like, let me just see. Give me a sign. And then when I ask for signs, I get them. And that's why I always say tell people ask and then look for them.
Yeah.
And you won't believe me. I saw this huge tree. I actually will send you the picture. I was going to do a post on it, but with like these roots going all over, like these ginormous roots. And I didn't even put the two together. I was like, gosh, I just want to stand there and like get the energy from these roots because there's just such a power, right? You ever see these like ginormous trees and the roots are like the size of
Yeah.
your body? And I was like, there's such a force here. I felt so called for, and I just pulled myself closer to these roots and I just sat there and I just closed my eyes and I'm just like, this is incredible. Like the energy here. And then I was like, oh my God, this was my message.
Mm.
And it was like, anchor yourself,
Mm.
solidify your roots, ground
Mm.
yourself, make sure your foundations are solid.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, you delivered the message, right? Because I was looking for it.
Mm.
So, and it couldn't have been more of a compelling message because I had just done this event and I was like so excited by all these different, opportunities, people reaching out. And I was like, what do you want me to know right now? And God was like, pause, get yourself really foundationally strong before you say yes to a million things.
So beautiful. I love that. I love the teachings of nature. And I think it's a beautiful reminder because quite often we think that the divine guidance is going to come in one particular way, right? You feel like, oh, it's going to come, I'm going to hear the voice. And sometimes we might hear the voice, or and it's just such a beautiful reminder to stay open to the magic and stay open to the various ways that spirit is communicating to us and through us. And it will come often in a way that you least expect.
Oh, you have to stay open. And this is one of the biggest things I teach is God is in this very moment, right here. He's not in your regrets of the past or your fear of the future. God and his infinite creative, what does that mean God's here? His infinite creative capabilities that he is bestowing on us all is right here.
Yeah.
If you can plug in. So what does that mean? It means we have to drop the fear. We have to drop the fear and we have to drop this like past regret. I'll give you an example. I had a situation with my son where he wanted to get this app on his phone and I'm really against social media, like super duper against social media. And this is something all of us parents are dealing with right now, where it's like you want your kid to be popular and do what the rest of the kids do and not miss out on opportunities, all of that, but you want to maintain their well-being and their mindset. And so I was like, no, you're not getting this app. You're not getting it. And he went to a party. We were all there. It was like a family gathering, and all the kids had this app. And he just felt awful. He's like, I don't get this app and all that. And I was like, my gosh. And I started getting triggered where I was like, no, but I said no, right? I'm the mom. I'm on the committee of the moms that say no to social media. Like, right? The ego comes in, right? The ego and the fear, like, what is it? Oh my gosh, now I have to. And I woke up and I did one of these, these walks where I was like, what do I need to know? I know that like I'm here in this creative moment with God. Like, let me see something that I'm not thinking about. And I got the download where like, if I can put my fear, and that's when I had this moment that said, drop the fear, drop into faith. All right,
Mm,
if I could drop the fear of like him turning into some, drug addict because he
mm,
downloaded the app, if I can take away that fear, what could faith in this moment teach me? And I was just like brought into this download of what if there's a creative option here? What if he can get the app, right? But in exchange, you can ask him to do something that will still exercise the muscle that you're worried he's going to lose, right? So, how about if I have him read a book a week that I choose with him that will counter some of the negative toxicity that this app might bring? So I can still allow him to be on it for a limited time. He gets now 5 minutes of it, and it's on my phone, so it's not just whenever he wants. And in return, he's reading 25 pages of a really cool book, How to Win Friends and Influence People for Teens.
mm. Oh, what a good book.
And he's been glued to this book ever since. And yeah, he does his thing on my phone. But can I tell you the most amazing, like mic drop quotes he'll come and share with me at night? And I'm like, here you go, take the app, honey. Like, but that
Wow.
required me to like not get so debilitated by the fear. Like, what if there's an option we haven't thought of here? Could this be
Yeah.
used to my advantage, right?
Yes. Oh my God, so powerful. And also something that so many of us can relate to. I've got a teen daughter as well. I've got a nearly 16-year-old and boys that are 10 that are asking for a phone
Oh,
and all that. And this whole dropping of the fear and leaning into faith. And I feel like that's something we could do throughout our day again and again and again because we get so distorted in the fear. We're so conditioned in the fear paradigm and then opening up to that creative solution. And I do that as well. I will call, and I my wording changes around it's God, it's love, it's source, it's the universe, it's spirit, it's whatever comes to me, help me see what I can't see and show me this divine solution. It's just so beautiful. And it's in the silence that we hear that and, all the walking. And I do that as well. I walk and I talk.
yeah.
Sometimes I'll put the earphones in and like record it. So it doesn't like, it looks like I'm
Oh,
talking
yeah,
to
yeah.
someone.
I love that.
But,
Yeah.
I'm all good to be the crazy person who talks as well because, when you tap into the magic, it's like we get
Call
over.
me crazy. Yeah. I'm like, if this is crazy, I never want to be sane.
Exactly, exactly. I so love this. I love, love, love this conversation. So I just want to get back to this talking about the how. This is that last question. For someone listening right now that has a really big dream, so they've got a desire that's placed in their heart. And the thing that I hear most when I'm working with clients or things that people will come up against is, and you would probably agree with this, is like, how on earth, how could I make that happen? How could I leave this job and this salary and go and do something that I love? How could I go and take this trip right now when the blah blah blah? Like we get so tied into the house. So what is one thing that they could do today to just start to lean into it, to start to become an energetic match for that dream? And I know that that's a tricky question. It's like one,
Yeah, no,
but
it's my favorite question ever. The first fundamental before you even do anything is to believe that it's yours for the having. It's yours for the
yeah,
taking. I always say, and this is a big Jewish philosophy. We have the Rebbe, who is one of the founding leaders in spreading Judaism the way we know it today. He said, if you see a brokenness in the world, it is yours to repair. And I would apply that to anything. If you keep getting a calling of like something like, I can't wait to do this. I would love to do this. There's a reason that called you. So take those seriously. Take your desires, those when you close your eyes, the things that come to you seriously. There's a reason you get it and I don't. You desired it, I don't, right? It's made for you for some reason, for the experiences you've had, for the combination of all the elements in your life. It was hand designed for you. So don't take your desires lightly. Take them seriously. I would say that's before you even do anything,
Yeah.
right? Just don't dismiss them. Make sure you highlight it and honor them and recognize that it has real importance. And the second thing I would say is on a very simple front, every day, do something small. It doesn't have to be 4 hours, of it. It could be 30 minutes where you're doing that thing and allow yourself to do it without wondering what's going to come of it. I always say when you do what you love is when you get the downloads. And when you're in that flow, you get the downloads. So it's not so much what you're doing, it's what comes to you when you do what you love. So if you can carve out 15 minutes, I'll take whatever, even if it's 10 minutes, and you're doing something. Let's say somebody's like, I want to paint, I love art, but I'm an engineer, or I work I'm a pharmacist, or whatever it is. I'm not going to go open up an art studio, and then they don't do anything. Say, forget the art studio. What if 10 minutes a day? I have my paintbrushes out because it was part of our event. Again, you can't see it, but there's a paintbrush in my hand. Do some art, 10 minutes, and just allow yourself in those 10 minutes to receive downloads. And something will drop in, and someone will call you, and somebody will run into you in the street, and somehow that desire is going to start materializing into your life without you having to do anything but enjoy yourself doing what you love for 10 minutes a day.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Joy is such a big part of it, right? Like,
Huge.
what is lighting you up? Being in that. Such a beautiful, beautiful reminder. Thank you so, so much, Rona. I have loved this conversation. I love your energy and your wisdom.
Wow.
Tell us about how people can connect with you if they want to connect with you or find you.
I would love that. So I'm on Instagram, Rona Lalezary. The name is the Mindset Reset with Rona, but if you type in Rona Lalezary, you'll see it. That's probably the best way to be in touch. My podcast is called The Divine Download. It's on anywhere you listen to podcasts. So definitely find me there. And I have a website, ronalalezary.com. So feel free. But I would say keep in touch. Instagram is where I'm constantly feeding the latest of what I'm doing. So love to have everyone there. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rona. Love
Thank
this.
you for having me. And I loved all your questions. Really so thoughtful.
Yeah, great. Okay. Thank you.